Boom! You're stopped in a vehicle and just got struck in the rear by a distracted driver. Not an experience anyone wants to go through, but rear-end car accidents are one of the most common types of automobile accidents. In fact, according to data collected from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, rear-end car accidents account for roughly 31% of all automobile accidents. And of course, if you've been injured in a rear-end accident, you are likely hoping to get a big payday for all the damages and pain and suffering you have experienced. While many rear-end injury accident claims may only pay out $1,000 to $10,000, it is possible to get a payout of 6 figures or even 7 figures or beyond, depending upon the factors that I'm about to discuss in this video. Stick around to watch me explain the fifth and final factor that can often destroy the value of a rear-end car accident injury case. The first factor that impacts the value of a rear-end car accident injury case is liability. Even in rear-end accidents, you must prove liability against the other driver. You may be asking yourself, isn't it always the fault of the driver of the vehicle that strikes the vehicle in the rear? Well, most of the time, that is the case. Obviously, if someone is stopped at a stop sign, red light, or stopped for traffic when struck in the rear, they are not going to have any liability for the accident. It will be the driver that struck the stopped vehicle's fault. However, there can be occasions when the driver that is struck in the rear may have some liability for the accident. And if the accident happened in a state that has pure comparative negligence laws, like Kentucky, where I practice law, some fault can be apportioned against the driver who is struck in the rear. So how can that be the case, you ask? Well, for instance, if the driver that is hit in the rear just cut off the other driver, the driver that is hit in the rear in such a scenario could certainly be apportioned some fault for the accident. You see, in comparative negligence states, fault can be apportioned against all potential at-fault drivers in a car accident injury case, and if any fault is apportioned against you, your damages awarded to you in your case are subtracted based on the percentage of fault apportioned against you. The amount of fault apportioned against you in your car accident will obviously impact how much you get paid. If the driver that rear-ends you, for instance, is determined to be 100% at fault, you are entitled to 100% of your damages. But if 50% of the blame is apportioned against you and the remaining 50% is apportioned against the other driver, you are only entitled to be compensated for 50% of your damages against that other driver. The second factor that impacts the value of a rear-end car accident injury case is the extent of your injuries and damages. The type and extent of injuries you sustain will have a big impact on the value of your case. Some of the most common types of injuries sustained in a rear-end car accident include neck injuries like whiplash, bulging disc, herniated disc, fractures or AOMSI, back injuries including strains, bulging disc, herniated disc or fractures, concussions and brain injuries, shoulder injuries, and lacerations. It's probably obvious, but the more severe the injury, the higher the value of your injury case. The more treatment required to treat your injuries, the higher the value of your case typically. If you, for instance, sustained a herniated disc in your back due to your car accident and have surgery to repair the herniated disc, your case will likely have more value than someone that merely sustains a back strain with only a couple trips to the doctor. Also, to stay on this point, the more economical damages you can claim due to your injuries, the more your case is worth. The most common types of damages in injury cases one can claim are medical bills, lost wages, and pain and suffering. But don't forget, you can claim future damages as well. So you can recoup damages for future medical bills you will likely incur, damages for the impairment to your ability to earn an income in the future, and damages for future pain and suffering you will incur due to your injuries. If you have a high-paying job and are forced to miss work for 5 or more months due to your injuries sustained in your car accident, your lost wages are going to be potentially a significant part of your claim. The third factor that impacts the value of a rear-end car accident injury case is the extent of the property damage to the vehicles. This is another factor that insurance companies, attorneys, and juries often look at to determine the value of your rear-end accident injury claim. If there is little to no property damage sustained by the vehicles, it can mean your injury claim will be valued at a lower amount. This does not mean you don't have an injury claim worth pursuing, however. I certainly don't want to discourage someone from ever pursuing an injury claim. I've certainly seen cases where an injury victim's vehicle sustained very little property damage that led to a significant recovery in a case. But all other things being equal, if you sustain significant damage to your vehicle after being struck by a tractor-trailer vehicle, you have the much better shot of making a larger recovery on your injury case as opposed to someone in an accident where the vehicle sustained little property damage. The amount of property damage is just one detail looked at when the value of a rear-end accident injury case is evaluated. The fourth factor that impacts the value of a rear-end car accident injury case is how much insurance is available to you. The minimum liability insurance required by the state of Kentucky, where I practice law, that someone must have on their vehicle to provide coverage for causing bodily injury to someone is $25,000 per person, $50,000 per accident. Thus, the most insurance one person could ever get from an at-fault driver in Kentucky with minimum insurance coverage is $25,000. If 4 people are injured by the same driver, the most paid out under that policy to the 4 victims would be a total of $50,000 split up between the 4. It's estimated that there are 28 million uninsured drivers in the United States, which equates to being about 1 out of 8 drivers on the road are driving without insurance. There are countless drivers out there with no insurance or very little insurance. People without any insurance or very little insurance on their automobile are typically what we call judgment proof. This means that even if you get a court judgment against them for a certain amount, it is worthless because they don't have the money to pay out anything for your damages. The amount of insurance available to you on your case will have a huge impact on your case. The best way to protect yourself is to purchase as much uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage as you can afford on your automobile policy. This type of insurance coverage will compensate you or your loved ones for your injuries and damages in the event you are in a wreck caused by an uninsured or underinsured driver. The fifth and final factor that I will discuss that impacts the value of a rear-end car accident injury case is if you settle your injury case too quickly. There are some situations that it makes sense to settle quickly, like if the other driver does not have enough insurance to cover your injuries and your claim is clearly worth the policy limits, it makes sense to settle for the policy limits quickly. However, in many cases, you won't have any idea of what your case is worth shortly after your rear-end car accident. You cannot predict the future of how much medical treatment you will need. If the other driver's insurance company offers you a measly amount of money to settle your injury claim shortly after the rear-end car accident, do not accept that measly offer. In most rear-end car accident injury cases, it makes sense to wait until you are either done treating or reach maximum medical improvement to even start with settlement negotiations. You simply won't know the value of your case until you are either done treating or reach maximum medical improvement. The thing is, knowing how much you can get paid for your rear-end accident case is great, but what do you do when the insurance company makes you a lowball offer? In order to possibly get a fair and reasonable settlement offer in your case, you have to know how to respond to a lowball settlement offer. And in this video about to pop up here, I'll tell you 4 tips as to what to do when you get a lowball settlement offer in your case. Lastly, if you've been injured in a car accident in Kentucky, remember to don't wait, call Tate.